We're back.
We're back again.
This Monday, we're talking about rule number 10 from the 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And rule number 10 is be precise in your speech. Nice and simple.
Yeah,
Be precise in your speech. Um,
go for it.
as Peterson has done in all the previous chapters, I think he gets a pretty simple rule that he puts out, and then he goes pretty deep and complex in the explanation of why we need to be precise in our speech. But one of the big things he talks about is relationships and the importance of being precise when we're speaking to somebody that we have a relationship with, and the importance of that. You have been around a lot longer than I have, double the time that I have.
Yeah.
Um, and you have a lot of experience. What do you think? Do you agree with Peterson on that? That's what's extremely important in a relationship? Do you have maybe a different point of view?
Oh no. Being precise with your speech is epic. It's extremely important because if you're not, if you're vague, and if your message is not conveyed properly,
Mm-hmm.
then things are not gonna work out in the best of ways. Things are gonna fall apart, actually. So you need to be precise because you need to let the other party know, whether it's your wife, your son, your daughter, your friend, or just an acquaintance. You need to let them know where you're coming from and where you're headed, kind of thing. What's on your mind,
Yeah.
what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and why, you know. So it's absolutely, in fact, isn't it also one of the four agreements?
Yes.
It's by,
Yes.
what was the name of the
The
author?
Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Don Miguel Ruiz.
It's be impeccable with your word.
Be impeccable. So it's, be precise in your speech.
Yeah. Even though this is very different than the four agreement, the fourth agreement to me had to do with being an honest person,
Okay.
holding to your word. When he says be precise in your speech, that's what I was going in thinking, but it actually seemed to be, it's similar, but it's more about if there's an issue, you have to be precise in addressing, let's say, what the issue is
Correct.
or what the goal or outcome is. And you do that by speaking, I guess, the truth and addressing everything, being impeccable with
Oh,
your word. Yeah.
listen, I don't know how many times you've heard me say that communication is an art.
Yeah.
And it's because when I'm talking to my staff, or I'm talking to my kids, or I'm talking to my grandkids, you say one thing and literally another thing gets heard.
Yep.
It, it, it's incredible. And
Yeah.
you have that Norman Rockwell picture where you're whispering something in one ear of one person and it goes down the line to 20 people or so. And then at the end of the 21st person, the message that originally got started, it's totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's because of our perceptions, our preconceived ideas, our experiences in life, and how attentive we are, at
Right.
that moment in time.
Were we listening fully to what they had to say?
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times if I'm lost in thought and mom tells me something, I need to ask her, please, can you repeat it? You know,
Yeah.
and,
Yes. You could be physically there, but mentally somewhere else.
and it happens a lot.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. Like this weekend, I was cleaning up the garages and stuff like that, and I came across a lot of, let's call it memorabilia or things from childhood, from you guys, and this and that, and it takes you like a few minutes. You think about it. Oh, I remember this and that. It takes you away. So, yeah, you can be lost in thought and not be completely in the conversation, and
Yeah.
that's a problem because
Correct.
the least that you can do to the other person is give them the respect of listening to what they have to say.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
He
Which
says it. He says it also.
Yeah. Um, so Peterson gets into the idea that life is simple when things are working and things are in order. Um, have you experienced that? That like chaos where something goes off, let's say whether it's with the family, you've always been there with your taking care of your parents and everything, and things to be seem to be in order, and then all of a sudden chaos happens, and the if you're not precise in what you're saying, like I like the example Peterson gave of like a diagnosis. When you go to the doctor, you have to know what is wrong before you can address and how to fix it.
Right.
But in that chaos is maybe a difficult thing.
Well, I'll give you a personal story. I had this particular issue, and I didn't think much of it, and it took me a while to go to the doctor. Um, when I say a while, I'm talking about 10 years. I was busy with business, with family, this and that, and the issue grew. It got more aggravated and it became painful. And I didn't go to the doctor for 10 years. That is something you don't want to do. By the time I got to the doctor, you know, um, fortunately, it wasn't anything bad. However, it needed surgery. And so I went through a surgical procedure, fixed it, moved on, no problem, thank God. Some people are not that lucky. If it takes you that length of time to go to the doctor. And when I went to the doctor, he was very precise on what the diagnosis was and what needed to get done. And we got it done within weeks. But, when you get hit with something like that,
Yeah.
then life all of a sudden is not that simple because um, things begin to fall apart. You need to, in the midst of chaos, it's what really puts your character at test and how much you can control the things that are under your control. Okay, to the best. There's some things you cannot control,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's why he says, "Hey, look, in the midst of chaos, be the one light in the room. Be the strongest person that you possibly can be at your father's funeral."
Yeah.
Because everybody else is falling apart, you be the person that keeps everything together. So,
Yeah,
he's brilliant.
you see people fall apart when something goes wrong.
Correct.
It seems like they have it all together. And then you see other people that seem to excel. Like in a very trying situation, they just take, I don't know, some strength from somewhere else, and they are able to push, let's say, the family forward. Like the loss of a family member,
Right.
somebody, some people fall apart and some people say, hey, I got to get it together because now I'm the one in charge
Correct.
that needs to lead the family or whatever.
Right. And some people can handle stress much better than others.
Yeah.
However, I believe that you can learn to handle stress. If you just hack your brain, your mind, and you tell yourself, I'm going to be the best I can be in this particular situation, which is easier said than done. But one thing that comes to mind are surgeons, cardiothoracic surgeons. They're cutting into you. Everything is going great. And then all of a sudden, there's a bleeder. A bleeder is either uh, an artery that has been cut inadvertently or was weak. And because of the stress of, the surgery, bust open or whatever, but it's bleeding and you can see the blood come out. And then now you actually have a medical emergency. You need to clamp that thing, you need to get to that thing, and um, you can hear the anesthesiologist saying, hey, the blood pressure is dropping. Blood pressure is dropping. Okay, you got to give him more fluids, whatever the case is, the doctors do,
Hmm.
you know. But that is someone
It's
that
pressure.
you're talking about the life of another person. So that is someone that needs to handle that stress, that chaos right there
Precisely.
immediately. And you better do it quickly
Yeah.
because you got somebody that's losing blood pressure. You okay? And so I admire surgeons very much
Yeah.
because that happens. No matter how good you are, you don't know what you're facing until you cut a person open and see how bad whatever has been going on has been going on. And so, one way that we could look at this, and that's my 2 cents, somebody might think it's silly. Let's go through life as life surgeons, you know? Because these surgeons that are operating, this happens all the time. If you got a 50-year career, you've had your share of these. Let's go through life as a life surgeon and make the best of whatever chaos comes. And you can tell yourself, hey, how can I take care of it? Or a
Yeah.
pilot,
Yeah.
you're
When
flying
something
a
goes
plane,
wrong.
you're flying a plane, and
Hmm.
something goes wrong. Now you got 365 people that depend on you.
Yeah.
You better do, you better be at your top game. And I think that's another thing. But
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that Peterson brought up, which I relate to, and I think he nails it, where he says, we avoid confrontation, and avoiding the confrontation eventually it leads to the problem growing. And he gave the example of the dragon, right? That was,
yeah, what was his name? Billy?
yeah,
Billy's Dragon.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because it's a visual representation, but yeah, if you don't address something right when it happens, and I've seen you do it, and for some people, confrontation is very difficult,
For me, it's difficult.
but you do it.
I,
You do it.
yeah,
If there are people
I don't
who,
like it, but
yeah, you're not intentionally because, like, so you don't want to hurt the person's feelings and all these things, but at the end of the day, it's better to confront them now than let the problem grow. Like if you see your grandkid doing something wrong, you gave the example of one time you had a family visiting and they were they put their feet on your sofa,
yeah,
your
their shoes.
their shoes,
Yeah, yeah.
and so you confronted the issue right then and there. Some people might say, "Oh, it's not my kid. Let me let them just do whatever. Maybe the parents will do it." I had some friends that came over with a kid and they were and I love them and everything, but the kid was messing up one of my piano, my keyboard. And so, they weren't doing anything about it, which I was first giving them a chance to do it. I mean, he's gonna break my keyboard. So I went and I picked the keyboard up and I moved it. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't they didn't think that anything of it.
See, it can create issues.
Yeah, because if I would have let him stay there, he could have broken it.
Oh, no doubt about it. He
And
has no knowledge, and it's naive and innocent.
well, the parents should have addressed it.
Right. I'm talking
The
about the kid. The kid doesn't know what
No,
he's
he's a
doing.
kid. Yeah, he's
Whatever. I
little.
don't know the situation. I don't know who it was. I don't know the age.
But it's better to address things before they progress
Right.
and become something bigger.
Well, the example that you cited, that's a family member, and the kid was putting his shoes on top of the sofa. And
Yeah,
it's not an expensive sofa or anything like that, but I just don't want him to do it. And if he does it, then all the other little cousins are going to do it too.
right.
So what I said was, hey, get your feet off the. And at first, loud, not loud but strong, he did it, but then he put him back on again. And so, you know, I addressed it again, and he had to bring his shoes off the sofa. And later on, somebody said, hey, you know, that was kind of harsh or whatever. And I said, well, it might, just no problem. And then they know that when they come to grandpa's house and grandma's house, there are different rules. They already know that. So here, it's our house, our game rules. You
Right.
go somewhere else, you know, you're good, whatever. But here, you're going to follow these rules.
Right.
And if you don't like it, then you're going to be on timeout and whatever. We got sidetracked, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But you confront the issue, and that's the biggest thing. And um, I thought it was interesting how Peterson brought up many examples, but specifically a husband and wife that began to drift apart.
Yeah.
And then, it's interesting how Peterson says, and then eventually, he gives a little storyline, and then he says eventually the man goes outside of his marriage and seeks,
And has an affair.
an affair outside. And then he's saying not who's responsible, but what could have gone wrong maybe. And initially it reminds me of like an investigator. Everybody's a suspect. We recently saw The Perfect Murder,
Oh yeah.
which was a great movie. And that one detective comes in and he's looking at everything. And he looked at the husband and he was also a suspect, when other people were not questioning him. And I think that's interesting how Peterson's coming in and he's saying, okay, it, it could be the husband's fault, or not blame, but maybe something was wrong that the husband did, but maybe also something was wrong that the wife did.
Sure.
And then try and resolve the thing. And then why did it happen? Why wasn't it addressed? He gave the example of the wife that um, just smiles and pretends everything's okay, even though they didn't like what just happened. And they're not because there's a fear that if you address and you confront the actual problem, you may actually find out, Peterson says, that you're a bad person. Or you may actually find out that it's the beginning of the end of the relationship. And ignorance, you rather live in ignorance and look the other way than actually address potentially what will be the end of the relationship, because it's not something you're willing to put up with, or they're willing to put up with. It was very interesting, how he brought up those examples.
Well, in that movie, The Perfect Murder,
Yeah.
there's a scene in there when she's talking to the mom and she's saying, I'm going to get a divorce. And she says, You are. And this is the way I interpret it. She said, Well, you have a way out. You know how many times I wanted to get a divorce from your father and I didn't. And I held on to that marriage for years and years and years, not liking this, not liking that. I never felt I had a way out like you do. So that I took it.
Did she say that?
I think so. I think that's how I took it. It's
I don't
communication, so you interpret it differently.
I don't remember the mom actually saying those words, but maybe.
Well, I'm paraphrasing, Mike,
Yeah.
so I could be making a mistake. But what I took from it, okay, is that she put up with this because she never felt that she had a way out like divorce in the newer generation.
Hmm.
And I attributed that to cultural,
Interesting.
okay? The older folks put up with a ton of stuff that the newer people or the younger people will not, you know?
Yeah, they might not. Yeah.
No, no, I guarantee you, okay? I guarantee you. I know for a fact, because I'm a lot older than you, I know for a fact couples that are older, the women have put up with a ton of baloney from the husband, and that the newer generations would, I I'm almost I'm a betting man, so I bet
They
they
won't.
wouldn't, they will not. That level of, well, Peterson says if you don't look into the issue immediately, then you live in misery. And some of these people, um,
Yeah.
and you got to realize, I don't know if you're just thinking about the U.S. or anything like that, but if we step outside of the U.S., we're talking about marriages that were planned. Like I know that happened a lot in the Philippines and in Eastern
India.
Asia, and yeah. So you're talking about,
What are they called? Arranged marriages?
yeah, and they met themselves either a week before the wedding or on the wedding day. And
No.
how do you know if you're gonna get along or whatever? And so I've heard some people say, And I'm not a clinical psychologist or anything like this. And what do I do? What do I know about anything?
Yeah.
Not much. So, but I've heard people say, oh, you know what? When I married your father, I wasn't exactly all that thrilled with him, but I learned to love your father.
Mm,
And you don't hear that in the Western kind of thing, civilization. I don't think, I don't know,
yeah.
you know. But arranged
I
marriages go through a lot.
Yep.
You're marrying a stranger, basically. And Pete, yeah.
Yeah, different cultures and what's acceptable.
And outside of the United States,
Right,
you
right.
know, I like the word you use. What was it that you describe to describe the story of the dragon?
Mm-hmm.
Which word do you use? Descripted, or it's
Oh, he
visual, or
yeah. Yeah, he gave us like a visual of the story,
right?
right?
So for the subscribers that have not read the book or this chapter, the idea is that the problem or an issue that comes up in your life is the size of a house cat initially, very small. But because you don't confront the issue with your partner, then that house cat grows and grows and becomes a huge dragon, extremely powerful, that is able to lift the house out of its foundation, to the point that one day the husband comes home and the house is no longer where it was, and he has to go running after the house to find it.
His family.
Yeah, to find his family. And then they finally confront the issue, and then they're able to resolve it happily in this particular case, and it shrinks right back down to a house cat.
It's a dragon and
Uh,
it starts the
right,
size of a house cat.
right back down to the size of a house.
Right.
The problem is that some people are not able to do that, and then that's where the split
It'll
comes
fall
in.
apart.
Right.
But the example in that story is that the wife never addressed that there was a dragon because the son, Billy, or whatever his
Billy.
name was,
Hmm.
told his mom, "Hey, there's a dragon the size of a house cat under my bed," or whatever. And
And
she was in
it's
denial.
right, and
That's the problem.
the house cat is a problem, an issue,
Right.
and you don't address it, it keeps growing.
And it got to the point where even when it moved the house and the wife was still in denial that it existed
That's right.
until finally she accepted it. They addressed it precisely, saying what the problem was, and then it shrunk back down.
Right.
So I like it because
So do I.
look, some people will hear this.
What's the word you use again? It's a
It's a good visual representation.
visual. Yes.
Some people will hear Peterson speak, and I've heard him in interviews and different. A lot of people think, well, I'm not gonna say a lot. Some people may think it's very negative because he opens with the premise of life is suffering, and he said it again in this chapter.
Yes.
Life is suffering. So it's like, a lot of it is could be seen as like dark, negative. The reality is though that we live in a world that there is dark. There is negative, and he's saying, here's the way towards, let's say, the light that he believes, right? These 12 rules, and being precise in addressing a problem. I think it's I think it's true. Like even like you and I, we're in business together.
Mm-hmm.
We run businesses together. We have a podcast together. We've worked together on and off. If there's an issue, we have to address it. Well, first off, we know each other very well to where I can tell when something is bothering you. Just like I'm sure you with mom and me with my wife, like we can tell when something's bothering them because we know how they are typically.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see that something's, let's address what's the problem. And most of the time, you're willing to talk about it, or I'm willing to talk about it, and then we try and resolve it. Sometimes it's not resolvable, like my bad driving, my bad driving when we're on the road. That's an issue we've talked about, and but I think that that's the best thing is being you know, like addressing something that's wrong. Like, for example, we were going to record today and I showed up late. And so that's an issue for you. So you bring it up to my attention and I don't like hearing it. But at the end of the day, it's better that you address it than hold on to it, let's say, and it becomes a bigger issue. And then something else happens. And then all of the things that you have been holding on to are thrown out in the argument. Like they're brought forth in the argument. But the real issue was that I was late. And that goes for any relationship, including business partnerships. They say when you go into business with somebody, that's like a marriage.
Stop hitting the table. Um, you just reminded me of my dad because my dad would address an issue and then move on and be happy-go-lucky. But he addressed the issue. And him and my mom, um, they would argue many times not in front of me, okay? And I learned this after I was older. But when they did argue in front of me, it seemed to me like, hey, the world is falling apart. So they were very careful, but they addressed it and moved on. And that was the good thing that I would always be expecting, you know? Because when a father and a mother divorces, the children, I think, suffer tremendously. I was going to say they're the ones that suffer the most, but you know,
Everybody suffers.
everybody suffers.
Everybody suffers.
Right. Now, with regards to the business, you're in your 30s. This is not your first business. You've had several. And now we're in business together again, right? But you've had other businesses. So you're a big boy. So I have no mercy with you. And that's something that you have my apologies. But the minute that I don't like something, I'm throwing it at you.
I think that's how it should be.
You know,
I think that's how it should be.
I have no mercy in that
Yeah.
sense. If you're late, you know, because I'm one of my sticking points or whatever, pit points,
Punctuality.
yeah, you have to. If you tell somebody you're going to be there at a certain time,
Yeah.
and
And I agree
granted,
with
you're
you.
not late. Most of the times you're on time, and if you're late a minute. But I'm letting you have it because
Well, even if I'm late a minute, you'll let me know
that's right.
because the point is that I'm late. And
That's
I
right.
get it. I
Look,
get it.
and I know that it bothers you and all this stuff, but I'm letting you have it
Yeah.
because I'm expecting you. If you tell me that you are going to do something, I'm going
Yeah.
to hold you to
That's an
it.
interesting point because recently somebody told me they were going to do something, uh, non-family member. They didn't do it. And I had previously taken this person by their word because they said they were going to do something. And so it kind of has left me with, mm, how do you know who to believe when they say they're going to do something or not? How do you decipher that? Like if somebody is telling you, that and they don't come through with that, okay, well, now the next time they tell me they're going to do something, this person, I'm not going to expect that they're going to come through with it.
That's right.
So I guess maybe you get burned once every time with every person.
Well, what is the old saying?
Fool
You
me once,
fool me once,
shame
shame on
on
you.
you.
Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah,
So now you know who you're dealing with.
yeah,
But we need to, because we're in business together,
yeah.
okay? And the business of real estate, which we're in, um, how can I say? It's every business is serious, but it's very intricate because I don't understand how people do not return phone calls. I understand about being super tired. Yesterday I was exhausted. But if I'm telling a client or a potential customer or somebody that I'm going to return that call, I will do it because if you don't, the way I look at it is it's chipping away at me.
Yeah.
I said something,
It's also professionalism.
professionalism.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
But you have professionals and non-professionals in any business, in any industry,
Right. But the people we associate ourselves all
are
stick to their
professionals.
words
Yeah.
because we picked them over the years,
And
whether
if
it
they
be
don't,
escrow, title, whatever it is for our business,
we address it.
we address it.
And if it happens, then we stop working with people
Like
like that.
like one company that we use a lot referred another company to us and said, "Let me send an email so I can tell them that, you've known us for a long time, this and that and whatever." And that other company never called. So what did I do? You were there. I called the company I work with and I said, "Listen, it doesn't affect our relationship, but because you are, they have a
Referring them.
partnership.
Yeah.
They have a partnership with that other company. They never called us."
I would argue it does affect the relationship to a certain extent because who you refer out is a reflection of on you too.
Yeah.
That's why you got to be really careful when
Well,
people ask you.
they're partners in that venture.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to affect them because
Yeah.
if they do that to other people like they did to me, you know,
They can lose business from the main business.
and she did lose it because she says, "Oh, let me call her again and send another email so she can call you." And I said, "No, that's okay. I'm gonna find another company."
Yeah.
And she was disappointed, but I came through and I did it
But
in the most polite way, the most courteous way. But
see,
I
but
told her, "Hey, I
that
never."
decency of it's confronting is what you did, and it's decency of saying, "Hey, look, I'm going another route," and putting closure. I really respect closure. I like closure.
Yeah,
I
like
don't
that
like.
one example where you tell me, you bring it up, where the guy told you, "Hey, I'm not going to use your services as a realtor because I have a family member that is a realtor."
Right.
And
I like that.
he told you like on the first phone call
Yeah,
or
I
some,
think so. Yeah.
yeah. And you came to me and you say, "I really like this.
Yeah.
He told me this.
He's not gonna do business with me.
He's not going to do business with you."
And that's great to, I instead of people leading you on, or instead of people just never wanting to address an issue or confront, because yeah, I get it,
Hey,
some
he's
people.
got a family member that's got, a real estate license. He's going to use his family member.
What's interesting in business, we've seen in the multiple businesses that we've been in, people choose not to go with family and go with us in some instances, or somebody else, not family. So this person felt family, they were going to use their family for this business, for real estate.
We got sidetracked, but
We
um,
did.
but you told me right away, I really appreciate this.
Yeah, he was precise, as Peterson says.
Right. But he didn't get the property.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that doesn't have to do necessarily, well, with him using family.
Well, I will agree with your statement. But if he would have told you, "Hey, you know what? I'm really interested in it," the offer would have been made within minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you go with family,
That
you are not going with the best.
Well, because
Sometimes.
if especially if it's a part-time person, whatever. And I'm not trying to criticize anybody and put us over,
No,
whatever.
but like,
But we're in this full-time and
you need
sit.
heart surgery.
Yeah.
Your brother happens to be a heart surgeon, but you have access to the best heart surgeon in the hospital, and it's not your brother.
Okay.
Who do you get your heart surgery with?
The
The
best.
best,
Your
if
life
you have
depends on it.
access to it.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily, I think it's good to, the word loyalty is very interesting,
Well, it's
you
very
know,
important. He's loyal to his family member, and that's fine. And I love that.
but if you need something done, don't you want the best? If your family happens to be the best, great. It's like, in politics, there's a lot of conversation about, or a boardroom. We need diversity in the boardroom, so we're going to hire this person of this ethnicity, of this gender, or whatever.
Whatever. based
but
versus
versus merit. This is the best person. They happen to be this gender, this ethnicity. They happen to be, right? And so I think you got to be careful with that.
well, I just interviewed somebody that said, "Hey, I got let go because the brother's nephew ended up in getting my position." That's not good.
That's called nepotism. Um,
Or is the nephew better than him? It's up for
oh, maybe,
interpretation.
maybe.
Maybe the nephew is actually more efficient than the person that was let go, you know?
A quote from the book: to specify the problem is to admit that it exists. And some people rather live, like Peterson says, in the fog intentionally.
That's, I mean, he's right on it, man.
Yeah. Um, Specify your destination and chart your course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, at the end of the chapter, he tries to bring some light, some positive, and, be specific, precise in what you want for your relationship, let's say, and then and move towards that. Um, you have a lot more experiences in longer relationships and everything than me, but I think all of us can relate to a certain extent with what Peterson's talking about when an issue comes up in a relationship and not wanting to address it.
And I think he comes up with this too. Remember the fact that we are all at flaw.
Yeah,
We're all imperfect. That's why we tell our subscribers, do your own due diligence and research. This is our interpretation of this. But we have a lot of faults within ourselves. When you realize that you are all imperfect, then you level the playing field
yeah,
and you may be able to have a more wider understanding of what the issue that the other person is going through.
right.
That's why I said earlier here, the the least that you can do to the person that is speaking to you is show the respect of your listening, you know? Because otherwise, how are you going to get to the bottom of the problem if you're half there, way there, and
Yeah,
and I have to tell mom sometimes, can you say that again? Because I'm off in another direction, and communication is an art.
it is. It is. Um, yeah, I think we all are flawed, and when you come into a conversation that way and you're trying to actually fix something, an issue, um, it's coming to the realization that you may be the problem or at least part of the problem as well,
Correct. Oh, yeah.
you know?
Well, usually you are part of the problem
Usually.
because you've done something that created something that wasn't addressed right there and then that got bigger because of what you did. So just remember, every time you point a finger at somebody, you have three fingers pointing right back
Yeah.
at you.
No one's perfect.
No one's perfect. And one quote that he said was, "Sharpen your tool, your sword, okay? Sharpen your sword and peer into the darkness and fight that dragon before that dragon comes knocking at your door." Okay?
Yeah.
And here again, you don't address it, it's going to grow potentially, and it's going to grow and it's going to take resentment along the way, which makes it more powerful, maybe even hate, you know? But resentment is very bad. And so you don't address it and it grows. He's talking about the relationship where the lady sees her husband with another lady at a coffee shop
Yeah.
and her world falls apart.
She begins to question everything.
Everything. What did I do wrong? This and that, and whatever. And he says, you didn't realize that you were skiing on thin ice for the last 10 years, for the last 20 years, or your life. You've been skiing on thin ice, and finally now so you're right, he's had a lot of visual, explains it fantastic. I
Yeah.
mean, this
And
is,
when the dragon comes knocking at your door, when the dragon appears, um, it what Peterson said is that happens in the worst moments. Like it's the worst possible timing for that to occur, and that's when it will happen.
And he also says it's not gonna fare as well as if you had addressed it when it started, whether it be 3 years
Or
ago,
even
5 years
later,
ago, 10 years ago, or whatever.
even later. Let's say you address it late, but you're going to address it. It's going to be very hard. You may encounter that dragon and it's going to beat you up kind of thing. Like I don't remember the exact words,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be a good it may not even be a good outcome, but
Right.
you're going to address the problem. And that's better than living that life of misery.
Right. The way I look at it is if the problem has grown a lot and you know there's a problem, and again, what do we know? Okay. Um, if you build up the strength, the inner strength in your core to address this issue with your beloved person, okay? What you have going for yourself is that you're doing it on your own time. You of course have thought about it, so you have ideas on how to approach this,
Hmm.
and you're ready for battle.
Right.
So you
You're
are
prepared.
addressing it on your own time, even though the problem is bigger and it may not fare well. You have a better possibility if your goal is to fix it and continue to move on with that person than if you let that dragon come back and
Right. It
get you.
springs onto you. You
So
know,
there's hope
yeah.
for you.
I think if you care, you'll address the problem. Even in talking right now, I was thinking, I remember it was very difficult for me to address with past employees, team members,
Mm-hmm.
something I didn't like that they were doing,
Okay.
whether it was the way they spoke to a customer. I remember one time it had to do with tardiness. I noticed that one person was coming in late, this and that. It was hard for me to address it. But at the end of the day, it was better to address it. It's better to address if you don't like something. The the fear is that they may not like it. They may just say, "All right, well, I'm leaving. I don't like this anymore." Whatever. You want things to be on the cool. And I remember that relationship with past team members. I wanted things to be cool, so I was willing to maybe let some things that bothered me that I didn't think were proper kind of slide because I wanted things to be cool. And I think that applies to any relationship. You kind of just you want to be okay. You don't want them to leave. What happens if they leave? What happens if you separate from your partner, your relationship, your husband, your wife? Like all of that is unknown.
Right.
And so that's the fear.
What was the previous rule? It said the unknown is better than the known.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's the unknown is a better friend than the known.
see, that's tough.
It is because it goes against the devil that you know is better
Better
than
than
the
the
devil
devil
that
that
you
you
don't.
don't.
Yeah. It goes against that.
But his purpose in this particular book is to make people think
Yeah.
and sit down and analyze their world and see where they stand and make the conscious decision. Do you like where you are? And if the answer is no, I don't like where I am, well, then the only person you can blame for not liking where you are is you. You want to change your circumstances, then you need to change.
Yeah.
And he's thrown some stuff over the last 10 chapters that, he's hit me like with a 2 by 4,
Yeah.
over the head. And I've told you and the viewers, I need a little time to digest this.
I think that it's so we got 2 chapters left.
Yeah.
So, we're if our subscribers have any ideas on what would be another our next book, we have a few ideas ourselves on what we want to do next.
Any suggestions, please?
Suggestions.
By all means.
But it definitely makes you think. and I think makes you a better person because when you think and have to look into yourself, introspection is
Mm-hmm.
good.
For sure.
Anything else you'd like to throw in?
No, no.
That's rule number 10. Be precise with your speech. Thank you.